I'm your host, Keith Radzik, and you can reach me anytime at radzikkeith7@gmail.com. We'll be starting the workbook, Pain Reprocessing Therapy. What is pain reprocessing therapy, PRT? Well, to understand that, you need to know how pain works. When you sprain your ankle, there are nerve endings in your body that send danger signals to your brain, and pain is generated. This is a good thing. It keeps you from walking on it for a few days so your ankle can heal. But sometimes the brain can make a mistake. Sometimes the brain can misinterpret safe signals coming from the body as if they were dangerous and generate pain even though the body is fine. We call this neuroplastic pain. And recent studies have found that most forms of chronic pain are, in fact, neuroplastic. Felicia had a chronic neck pain for 20 years. During the live demo, she implemented the technique of PRT and her neck pain disappeared. Yanni came up to me during the break and said, "This is nuts. It's like face healing, but with science." And it is science. PRT, Brain Reprocessing Therapy, is a set of techniques that teaches the brain to correctly interpret the signals coming from the body, and that deactivates the pain. Vanessa Blackstone has been treating patients using PRT since the treatment inception. As the executive director of the Pain Psychology Center, she has helped patients overcome every type of pain imaginable, and now, in partnership with her trusted colleague and collaborator. Chapter 1. Reprocessing your pain. The room is dark, the blackout curtains drawn, the television off, and the phone brightness turned all the way down. There is no noise other than the reassuring voice of the therapist on the other end of the phone, Clara. In her first session with the Pain Psychology Center, speak softly. Where do I begin? Do I describe it as insufferable? Because I'm suffering. I'm telling I'm still here, but I can't take it anymore. I want to beg and ask to be put out of my misery. At the same time, the idea of giving up almost feels worse. I know it doesn't really make sense, but the light hurts my head so bad that shutting it out almost helps my back feel better, which helps my feet feel better. How can a change of light calm parts of my body that aren't really a part of why I have pain there? All I know is that I need a solution. I'm not sure why this happens to me, but if I knew, you bet I would have avoided what caused it all by all means necessary. I am trying to remember that this wouldn't be forever, but somehow it's really hard to hear that optimistic voice. And I think because the pain is simply so loud, as much as I hate my suffering, knowing that I am not alone has really helped, because wow, does this feel isolating. I often feel like I am the only person in the world who knows pain like this. Yet, I am angry that I haven't figured out a solution. Chronic pain is indiscriminate, affecting approximately 10% of the world's population. Within the United States, an astonishing 21% of people grapple with chronic pain symptoms that cast a shadow over their daily lives. Symptoms can be described as, but not limited to, fatigue, restlessness, dizziness, irritable bowels, aching tendons and muscle pounding migraines, tension headaches, inflammation, numbness, sharp sensations, dull aches, burning mouth and tongue, and tension or tightness. These symptoms can be consistent over time or EBB and flow in instantly, varying in relationships with different factors like stress, weather, and time of day. As stated by Raphael, the attempt to understand pain represents one of the oldest challenges in the history of medicine. A revolutionary approach. The random clinical trial, commonly referred to as the Boulder Back Pain Study, which aimed to treat 50 adults with primary chronic back pain, asked a key question: can a psychological treatment based on reappraisal of primary chronic back pain as due to non-dangerous central nervous system processes provide substantial and durable pain relief. The results showed that 2/3 of participants who received the psychological treatment were pain-free and nearly pain-free afterwards, with effects maintained at a 1-year follow-up. Images of participants' brains revealed reduced response to back pain in specific brain regions, as well as increased connectivity associated with pain reappraisal. In other words, the study answered its question with a resounding yes. Changing the way that people think about their pain can lead to substantial and enduring pain relief. What is psychological treatment that so profoundly changed the way people experience pain? It is an approach that has changed both of our lives in so many ways. Developed by therapist Alan Gordon, pain reprocessing therapy, PRT, is a therapeutic intervention designed to alleviate chronic pain by challenging patients' beliefs about its causes. The primary goal of PRT is to help chronic pain sufferers recognize that their chronic pain is actually a false alarm that occurs in the brain and not in structural damage in the body. This is a system of techniques rooted in neuroscience, focused on embracing a new perspective. As Gordon states in his book, The Way Out, you will hear more in the next chapter about how exactly pain works. For now, we will begin to understand what this modality is all about. Building on these insights, PRT harnesses the power of neuroplasticity to heal chronic pain. But what does it really mean to reprocess pain? Reprocessing refers to the intentional reshaping of neural pathways associated with pain perception, changing the way your brain understands and relates to pain sensations. This may involve altering the interpretation of sensory signals, challenging automatic negative thoughts related to pain, and fostering new, healthier responses to pain sensations. Over time, using these tools to change the way the brain responds to painful sensations has the power to make those very sensations less painful and in many cases to eliminate the pain altogether. As a typical example of the brain's misinterpreting a sensation, imagine waking up in the morning with a dull pain in your head. You cannot help but dread the idea of having to get out of bed. Frustrated and in pain, you refuse to get up, fearing that starting your day will only make the pain worse. Without realizing it, you fall back asleep. Then, alert, you flail out of bed 45 minutes later, realizing you overslept and will have to rush. Now you are not only in pain, frustrated and anxious, but also late and not able to get your breakfast in. For the rest of the day, all your brain can do is focus on having started your day this way and the steadily increasing sensation of pain in your head. The headache gets worse as your day goes on, and your mood continues to dip. This cycle of pain, frustration, and worry is familiar to you. It feels like it's happening more and more often. It makes you worry. Am I lacking certain vitamins? Do I have a food sensitivity I don't know about? Maybe my neck is out of whack and I need to get it adjusted. Or maybe it's something more serious, like a brain tumor. Given your current view that pain is a signal of something wrong in your body, all of these are understandable associations to it. However, you're missing one key component, the sensation of pain in your head as soon as you wake up. There is a core belief here that the painful sensation in your head is bad. Of course, there's a grain of truth in there. Head pain sure does feel unpleasant, but the pain is not necessarily a signal of something wrong with your body, and there is more to the story than you think. Your brain is habitually interpreting the painful sensation in your head as dangerous, and not just a signal of physical danger, but also a sign of other kinds of danger, like the threat that the headache poses to your ability to perform work. The more you reprocess pain, the more you come to see it as a sensation rather as a problem. That must be fixed. The better chance you have of easing your way into the day in a way that might actually lead the pain to decrease or go away altogether. In other words, if you can learn to view pain as simply a sensation rather than a problem that needs to go away, you'll be operating from a place of safety, which in turn will make the pain and its consequences easy to deal with. Operating from a place of threat, on the other hand, can entrench the pain further and make it an even bigger problem to surmount than it would otherwise be. The goal here is to learn how to work with your nervous system, not against it. To begin exploring your relationship with perceptions of danger, take a moment to answer the following question. What is one non-pain thing your brain interprets as dangerous, and why? For some, it might be spiders. For others, flying in an airplane. For others, emotional vulnerability. What is it for you? Like button smashed. Is outcome independence, or the importance of practicing the tools used in reprocessing work, independent of the outcome. The goal is not to make the pain go away and never come back, but to change the way in which you respond to the pain when it arises. The sneaky truth. Learning to respond to pain in an outcome-independent manner is what ultimately causes the pain to go away. Maybe not this instant, but over the long term. This new way of relating to unpleasant sensations is the secret to deactivating pain pathways. On the other hand, if making pain go away is the outcome you're set on, paradoxically, it'll make it that much harder to actually achieve. Understandably, you want out of pain. That is why you are here, starting this workbook. But the tighter you hold on to that goal, the further away it'll be. We will explain more about why this is true in the next chapter, when we explore the neuroscience underpinning of chronic pain. But for now, suffice it to say that learning to relax your grip on the outcome is one of the best things you can do for your own recovery. Easier said than done, we know. To better understand what this may look like in real life, consider one of the author's experiences. Vanessa faced many challenges as she grappled with trying to guide others in their recovery while also trying to figure out how to recover from her own pain. When Vanessa sought advice from a fellow therapist named Sherry at the Pain Psychological Center, Sherry responded by sharing some wisdom her dad had passed down to her. The process of moving through life is like carrying a scoop of rice in the palm of your hand. It's a given that, as you're walking on your journey, some rice will fall. But clenching your fist tightly around the scoop of rice to protect it will only lead rice to fall out from between your fingers when it wouldn't have otherwise. This wisdom passed from Sherry's father to Sherry and then on to Vanessa serves as a steadfast guide in facing life's challenges. It encourages letting go, trusting the unfolding process, and adjusting our response to symptoms. Vanessa applied this wisdom, easing her grip and embracing uncertainties. Recovery is not about tightly controlling your pain. Instead, it's about learning more about your pain so you can, over time, loosen your grip. We encourage you to navigate through this workbook with kindness and patience, even during tough moments. For now, as you begin to explore this new way of relating to your symptoms, we ask you to release your hold on any specific outcome and simply focus on moving through the practical steps in this workbook, one by one. Let's take a moment to check in. Imagine visiting an aquarium. You're entered a cool, dark room. It is blue, and the room's quiet, peaceful, and comforting. There is a tall glass wall from the floor to the ceiling. That is at least 2 feet thick. The sun beams down onto a big body of water from above the tank. The light is trickling in through the water, glittering down onto you as you walk deeper into the room. You find a cement bench and sit down on a cool surface, dropping your shoulders as you sit back and giving a deep exhale. This is your time to just observe. Observe what thoughts you are having. Observe what sensations you are experiencing. Observe what you hear around you. Observe what you feel like watching tonight after you finish dinner. Take this time to create some space between you and the urgency to dive into this workbook and make progress. And when you are ready, place your workbook on this page or folder corner and close the book shut. Be that observer in the aquarium and take 3 gentle inhalations and 3 gentle exhalations. And when you are finished, come back to this page. Now that you've returned, take a moment to jot down what you observed. There is no right or wrong answers, only observations. You did it. This is your first foray into mindfulness, the process of sitting back and simply observing without judgment. Even if it's uncomfortable. From that mindful place, you are going to set the intention for this workbook. Keep in mind all that you have read and reflected on so far. What is your intention for this workbook? What is the attitude that you want to carry with you as you make your way through this workbook? I would like to carry the attitude of being pain-free, and I would like to notice space. Identifying personal goals. Now that you have set your intention, let's focus on how your personal goals in this process can set you up to have the best outcome of joy in your routine. A sense of lightness, ease, and playfulness that everyone deserves. What are the light, fun, playful things that you want to get back to, or maybe for the first time? Here, we're not talking about getting back to a rigorous daily routine. What we have in mind are things that bring you joy. Maybe that's going for a walk on the beach, sitting through a movie with your loved ones, or learning to make pasta by hand. Name 3 things that motivate you to do this work. I would like to be able to walk on the beach. I would like to be able to sit through a movie. And I would like to be able to enjoy my children with being pain-free, doing activities. Chapter 2, How Pain Works. Pain is the brain's way of alerting you to danger. In other words, pain is a danger signal. Whenever you feel pain in the body, it's because specific nerve fibers in your brain have been activated. When you burn your hand, it feels like the pain is coming from your hand, but the sensation is actually coming from the part of your brain that makes you feel pain in your hand. If a brain surgeon tickled that same part of your brain just the right way, even in the absence of anything actually happening to your hand, you'd feel pain in your hand. Even if someone has lost their hand to amputation, stimulating that same part of the brain will cause them to feel the very same hand pain. This is what we mean when we say that all pain comes from the brain. Exercise. Identifying your hot spots. As shown in the diagram, different parts of your brain correspond to different parts of your body. When nerve fibers in that part of your brain correspond to tongue are stimulated, you feel something in your tongue. When nerve fibers in the thumb part of your brain are stimulated, you feel something in your thumb, and so on. Write down the parts of your body that have experienced the most chronic pain. Now circle the top 3. Take a look at the diagram of your brain shown here that have been stimulated over the course of your own experience with chronic pain. Now take a look at the 3 areas in your body where pain has been the most problematic, which in turn will reveal the 3 areas in the part of your brain shown that have been the most stimulated. Please write down the 3 most stimulated parts of your brain. For me, it has been head, neck, back, sensory cortex. The next time that you experience a chronic pain symptom, which could be right now, as you read this very sentence, take a moment to think of this diagram and bring to mind the part of your brain that's being stimulated. Reflect on the fact that while you feel the pain in your body, the brain is actually coming from your brain. How does this reflection affect the way you think about your pain? Does this new understanding change your experience of the pain in any way? There are no right or wrong answers to this question. Your only task is to take some time to sit with them and to be curious about what you find. When the brain makes mistakes, ideally the brain would only send a pain signal when there is actual danger, like when you burn your hand on the stove. But sometimes the brain makes mistakes Although pain often represents genuine danger, sometimes the pain is real, but the danger isn't. Your brain is more worried about keeping you safe than it is about getting it right. Fear puts our brain on high alert. It puts us on guard. In psychology, the word for this is hypervigilance, because the fearful brain is so preoccupied with protecting us from danger, it takes on even more of a better safe than sorry attitude than it normally would. The fearful brain would always rather err on the side of caution. The problem is that when fear causes the brain to err on the side of caution, it makes it far more likely that natural inputs will be mistaken for dangerous ones. The fearful brain. Imagine that you're on a camping trip and you just learned that not long ago there was a bear attack nearby. You're walking along alone through the forest near your campsite when you see a dark, shadowy figure in the distance. Your brain shouts bear, your heart pounds, and your natural instinct is to run in the other direction. If you believe the danger message that your brain is sending, you won't stick around long enough to see that the shadowy figure isn't a bear at all, but is just a great big stump. When fear causes us to look at the world through a lens of danger, our perception becomes distorted. Furthermore, in the same way that fear can distort your visual perception, making your brain more likely to mistake safe stimuli for dangerous ones, fear can also distort your perception of physical sensations, making your brain more likely to mistake perfectly natural sensations for dangerous ones. And in the realm of physical sensation, what does the brain do when it perceives danger? That's right, it sends a pain signal to alert us. In this way, fear is the secret ingredient that causes us to feel very real pain, even when there is no actual danger. By causing the brain to err on the side of caution, fear makes the brain more likely to mistake safe sensations for dangerous ones, resulting in very real pain. Naturally, we begin to fear the pain itself, not only because of how much the pain hurts, but also because of all the various ways that the pain impacts our lives. The more we fear the pain, the more sensitive the brain becomes to potential signs of danger, causing the brain to err even more on the side of caution than it did before, which ultimately causes us to feel even more pain. In this way, pain causes fear, which causes more pain, which causes more fear, and so on. And this phenomenon is known as the pain-fear cycle. Fear is the fuel that keeps pain burning. This flavor of fear. Fear is kind of like ice cream. It comes in many different flavors. Some ice cream flavors don't sound like ice cream at all, but upon closer inspection, yep, they're ice cream. Fear is the same way. It comes in many different forms, some of which might not seem like fear at first glance. But what all flavors of fear have in common is that they put the brain on high alert, causing the nervous system to be extra sensitive to potential signs of danger. The following chart shows different flavors of fear that people may experience surrounding their pain, as this fear manifests in their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Looking at the chart, place a check mark next to the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that are familiar to you from your own experiences. In the blank spaces, write down any other flavors of fear that you have experienced. In your daily life, continue to notice what flavors of fear emerge, and keep coming back to this page to update it as you move through the workbook. This is what the page says: thoughts, feelings, and behaviors down the list. Thought: what if the pain means I have cancer or I'm seriously ill? Feeling: tension. Behavior: fixating on the pain, that is, watching it like the hot. Next thought: is the pain back? Is it getting worse? Is it getting better? Anxious. Behavior: checking to see if the pain is there, getting worse or getting better. Next thought: I need another MRI, expert opinion, etc. Feeling: unease. Behavior: preoccupation with the pain, how it's affecting you. Next thought: if the pain doesn't get better, I won't be able to play with my kids and enjoy my time. Feeling, irritation. Behavior, trying to control the pain or make it go away. Outcome, dependence. Next thought, I hate my body. Feeling, frustration. Behavior, bracing for the pain. Next thought, I can't handle this. Feeling, resistance. Behavior, bracing for the pain. Next thought, what am I going to do if the pain never ends? Feeling, anguish. Behavior, complaining about the pain and your inability to fix it. Next thought, I give up. Feeling, disassociation. Behavior, numbing out with drugs, alcohol, food, TV, etc. These were the blanks that I filled in. My thought, how will I survive if I can't move? Feeling, depressed. Behavior, keep moving slowly. Next thought, pain is so bad. Feeling, helpless. Behavior, working with fear. For many, learning about the key role that fear plays in perpetuating pain can be overwhelming. At first, I thought all I had to worry about was the pain, but now I have to worry about worry too. However, you've already done the hardest part, recognizing the ways that fear shows up in your own experiences. Means that chronic pain's secret ingredient isn't so secret anymore. Once you begin to understand the relationship between fear and pain in your own life, you can also start to work with it. And that's where the magic happens. At this point, your job is to not allow the fear to slip back into secret ingredient territory. Where fear emerges, shine a light on it and see it clearly for what it is. In the days and weeks ahead, continue practicing being aware of how fear shows up in your own experience. Pay attention to fear that's specifically about the pain, but look out for other kinds of fear as well, because all fear puts the brain on high alert. Fear doesn't have to be about your pain to fuel it. Remember that your job is not to control fear or make it go away. Your only job is to notice it when it arises. Eventually, as you work through the chapters of this book, the fear will start to fade on its own, we promise. For now, when you notice that flavor of fear has arisen in your body or mind, just notice it. You might even practice silly sayings, saying to it, "Hi fear, I see you," as if the two of you were playing a lighthearted game of hide and seek. Remember, fear is not your enemy. In fact, it wants nothing more than to protect you. It just happens to be extremely confused about how to do that. Every time that you are able to see fear and respond to it in this lighthearted way, you take another step in the direction of breaking the pain-fear cycle once and for all. So now you understand that pain is a danger signal sent by the brain to alert us to danger. And you also understand that sometimes the brain makes mistakes by interpreting safe inputs as dangerous and sending a very real pain signal even when there's no actual danger. When this kind of pain happens repeatedly, it's known as neuroplastic pain. Neuroplastic pain and other symptoms. You can think of neuroplastic pain as the brain's version of a glitchy car alarm. If a car alarm is working properly, when does it go off? When someone is trying to break in, of course. But you probably encountered a few car alarms in your life that weren't working quite right. You know, the kind that go off whenever someone brushes up against the door, or a truck driver by blasting loud music, or a pigeon flies overhead. For those of us who experience neuroplastic pain, the brain habitually misinterprets neutral inputs as danger and sends a pain signal in response over and over and over again. Some simple car alarms only have one sound that they repeat over and over to get your attention, but fancy car alarms have a bunch of sounds. The brain is like that fancy car alarm. It has a variety of alarms that it can use to signal danger, and pain is just one of them. Some of the brain's favorite danger signals include pain, anxiety, digestive issue, fatigue, dizziness, and itching. Although we mostly talk about pain in this book, you may be familiar with some of the brain's other danger signals. The good news, they all work pretty much the same way, And the information that we're giving you about pain also applies to these other symptoms. Neural pathways and neuroplasticity. Why do we call this kind of pain neuroplastic? Neuroplasticity describes the changeability of the brain. Neuro means relating to the nervous system, and plastic means easily shaped or molded. When we talk about neuroplasticity, what we're referring to is the way that the brain is changeable. The neuroplasticity isn't necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. It simply describes the way in which brains easily pick up new habits, habits that can be helpful or unhelpful. Neuroplastic pain just so happens to be one particular unhelpful habit. Imagine two forest trails. One is big and wide trail that is smooth and open from the many feet that have walked it before, and the other is a tiny trail that is so filled with roots, rocks, and undergrowth that it's hard to distinguish from the surrounding forest. If you were in the middle of a hike through the woods and had to choose between taking the big wide trail or the tiny overgrown one, you'd probably choose the big wide one. In fact, the big wide trail is not only easier to walk down, but also so well established that you might just walk down it without even realizing that the tiny overgrown trail is an option. The brain's neural pathways are like this. The more neural pathways traveled, the smoother and wider it gets, and the easier and more automatic it becomes for us to travel down in the future. Conversely, the less we use a particular neural pathway, the more overgrown it will become, and the less automatically we'll end up using it in the future. In this way, the brain changes over time. The phenomenon called neuroplasticity. Take a moment to think back on something you intentionally learned to do when you were younger, like tying your shoes, playing a song on the piano, executing a tricky dance move, or throwing a frisbee. Write down the name of the activity you recall. Remember how hard it was at the beginning? You likely stumbled for a while, awkwardly struggling your way through from one moment to the next. But at some point, you kind of started to get the hang of it. Then before you knew it, it was actually easier. And now, maybe now, you're able to do the thing perfectly without thinking about it at all. The more you practiced it, the more you traveled that trail through the forest in your brain, making it smoother and wider with each repetition. In other words, the more you practiced it, the more you strengthened that neural pathway, making the action easier and easier to do. This is an example of neuroplasticity. And just as your brain can learn how to tie shoelaces or throw a frisbee, your brain can learn pain and unlearn it. I learned how to smash the like button. How pain becomes chronic. Unlike learning a new dance move, pain is not something that we learn on purpose. But whenever we respond to pain with fear, that's exactly what we're doing. Practicing the pain-fear cycle and ensuring that the pain will persist. This is how the pain-fear cycle builds momentum in the brain and how pain becomes chronic. At first, the pain might just be a tiny trail through the woods, a headache that you got one time during a particular stressful period at work. But then you start to worry about getting another headache and how that would make it difficult to meet your upcoming deadline. And the prospect of missing a deadline really stresses you out. And then you get another headache. And now it's happened twice. And you feel like you really can't afford to get another one. Because if you do, it will definitely start to affect your job performance. And then you get another one, and so on. Until before you know it, the pain-fear cycle is like a freeway running through the forest of your brain. The habit is so strong that it starts to happen automatically. And you've got chronic pain. But what about chronic pain that begins with an injury? In that case, there is genuine physical danger at the outset, and that's what triggers the pain at first. And as part of the nervous system's built-in protection mechanism, pain pathways can become hypersensitive in the wake of an injury to prevent you from injuring yourself further. But for many of us, this hypersensitivity persists long after it served its purpose. causing us to continue experiencing pain even after the injury has healed. As the brain sends the pain signal repeatedly over time, accompanied by all the flavors of fear that would naturally accompany an injury, the pain-fear cycle becomes more deeply ingrained in the brain, causing the pain switch to become stuck in an open position. You end up with a pain-fear cycle highway, and the result is pain that persists long after the initial injury has healed and the genuine danger has passed. A similar phenomenon occurs when there is an enduring structural issue in the body, for example, arthritis or a herniated disc, and the brain overreacts, treating it as extremely dangerous, even though the actual danger level is mild or even non-existent. As a result of this overreaction, you experience far more pain than necessary. Pain that could simply be a dull and barely noticeable ache is instead a volcanic eruption of physical suffering. Why? Because the pain-fear cycle has taken root. Once a flavor of fear enters the picture, even one as seemingly harmless as annoyance or irritation, the brain's hypersensitivity to potential signs of danger will increase, and we're off to the races. As this pattern is repeated over time, the pain-fear cycle becomes your brain's default state, and you've got chronic pain. There are many different names for neuroplastic pain. You can hear it be called central sensitization pain, mind-body syndrome, primary chronic pain, central pain syndrome, tension myocystis syndrome, neural circuit disorder, psychologic disorder. However, these terms may mean slightly different things on a technical level. For our purpose, they are interchangeable, and you can think of them all as a different way of saying neuroplastic pain. A different solution, researchers at Northwestern University compared the brain activity of subjects who had experienced back pain for less than 2 months, early back pain group, to the brain activity of subjects who had lived with back pain for over 10 years, chronic back pain group. They found that the back pain-related brain activity in the early back pain group was limited to regions of the brain involved in acute pain, whereas back pain-related brain activity in the chronic back pain group was confined to a completely different part of the brain, which is associated with emotion-related circuitry. The researchers followed the early back pain group for another year, comparing brain activity of those who recovered from their back pain to the brain activity of those who didn't. Among those who recovered, back pain-related brain activity diminished in time, whereas among those for whom the pain persisted, back pain-related brain activity decreased in the acute pain regions of the brain, but increased in the regions associated with emotion-related circuitry. The researchers observed that the brain's activity of chronic pain sufferers was visibly different from the brain activity of those experiencing acute pain. What this tells us is that chronic pain happens via different neural pathways than acute pain. Even though the two types of pain may feel the same, chronic pain is not simply a version of acute pain that happens repeatedly over a long period of time. Chronic pain is a completely distinct neural phenomenon. So given that chronic pain is different from acute pain, how can we treat it? We treat acute pain by working with the body, surgery, medication, and other physical interventions. But as you may know from our own experience, those physical interventions don't work so well when it comes to chronic pain. Why? Because it's a completely different problem, and a different problem that requires a different solution. The first step is getting curious about what happens in your own nervous system. Join me on the next episode where we will start our self-assessment. We'll start understanding the myths associated with chronic pain, the myths on the misdiagnosis, how the overprotective system evolves, beginning to dive into our protective traits and how to balance them and understand them, and how they become our inner protection that is linked on to neural pathways that are filled with chronic pain. Feel free to reach me at RADZIKKEITH7
@gmail.com.
Like button smashed.
Not like this, and dressed like that. How could I wanna be anywhere else? Got a heart of gold and a soul to match. Can measure this moment in a photograph. You look so beautiful, baby. How you change me? Yeah, you save me. I'm sure I gotta feel it. I can't. Chasing your fire. Just feeling. Never been so clear or felt like this. I live for the days when I'm lost in your kiss. You look so beautiful, baby. How I gotta feel it. I can't even find. Chasing your heart. Feel it. Change my. You save me with that interest. I gotta feel it like never before. I'm so chasing your heart. It's